What's up everybody? Welcome back to Cocktail Camera. I'm Jordan and today I will be showing you how to best capture branded beverage content. When it comes to doing cocktail and beverage related photography, the majority of your clients will be beverage brands. For me, that means a lot of liquor brands, which is why I have so many bottles of whiskey and tequila and all that in my studio. Maybe for you, you're doing some photography for a brewery or a winery, just any form of beverage. And photographing a beverage is one thing, whether that be a glass of beer or a cocktail or what have you. But when you are working for a brand, you also have to incorporate the product. So a wine bottle, a liquor bottle, etc. And that doesn't sound all that complicated at first, but it can get kind of tricky. Because when you have both a product and a beverage, you are essentially working with two different subjects that both have to be the hero of the imagery. So let's jump right in to 4 different tips and suggestions of things to keep in mind when you're doing photography for brand clients. So the first thing is always make sure you get a creative brief or visual guidelines from your client. Most larger brands have fairly strict visual guidelines around how to capture their product in photo and video assets. These guidelines tend to be a list of do's and don'ts with accompanying visuals, so things like colors you should incorporate as well as colors you should avoid, things like backgrounds they like versus backgrounds they don't like, etc. Now, if you ask a brand for their visual guidelines or a creative brief and they come back with, "We thought you'd tell us what to do," I mean, that's sometimes the case with smaller brands, then simply ask them to go on Pinterest or Instagram, some sort of image-based platform, and just ask them to show you 5 or 6 photos that they like, that are kind of their visual goal for the shoot. And similarly, ask them to provide a few photos that they don't like, maybe imagery for some competitors or a similar shoot in the same vertical of a direction they don't want to go visually. Always keep in mind that your brand clients tend to be very busy and they might have various other projects they're working on, and they may just unintentionally assume that they're being clearer than they are. Or maybe they just think you can kind of read their mind after they jump on a phone call or 2 with you. But always try to get very clear expectations just to eliminate any guesswork on your end. All right, so now let's get very practical when it comes to actually capturing the imagery for your clients. I see a lot of beginner photographers kind of make this mistake where they very much focus on the cocktail or the beverage, as you should, but then they kind of put the product in the background to where it's kind of slightly blurred out. And it's pretty universal that every brand client wants their product to be clearly in focus and not blurred out at all. So to do that, our next tip is to set both the product and the beverage on the same focal plane. What that means is imagine there is a horizontal line on your table or shooting surface, and you want to place both the beverage and the product on that line perpendicular to your camera lens. For this type of shot, I often shoot down low, kind of looking up at the subjects. This is what's known as kind of your classic hero shot, where it makes your subject or subjects kind of look larger than life and really heroic. Now, this is pretty simple. It's not necessarily the most creative or dynamic shot, but it is effective as many beverage clients ask for good hero imagery of their products or their products alongside beverages. This also just makes things easier for you because both the product and the beverage are on the same focal plane. You could shoot with a wide aperture to blur out that background, and both subjects are going to be in focus. Now, this next tip is when you want to get a little more creative with your camera angle or your composition. So I suggest closing down your aperture, which then will broaden your focus area. Everyone likes shooting with a really wide aperture, like 1.2 or 1.4 if your lens can do that. Depending on the lens, even 2.8 to 5.6 can give you a lot of separation where you have that really sharp subject and then a nice soft blurry background. It's a really nice and easy look to do. But when you have a wide aperture like that, your focus area is just really thin. Here's an example of a type of cocktail photo I do fairly often. Again, refer to your creative brief or visual guidelines because sometimes brands will say you can't crop off any part of the bottle. The whole bottle has to be in the shot. That wasn't the case with this one. This just has the logo and the name of the bottle there in the corner, and the brand was happy with that. Now I shot this photo at like f8, maybe even a little smaller than that, because if I shot this wide open, even just at 2.8, just the glass itself would be in focus and everything else would be pretty blurry. Even if there's some separation, that's fine, but I wanted to make sure that bottle in the corner was crisp. Even though that's not necessarily the focus of the shot, it's very much on that mango margarita, I needed that branding to be clearly visible. Of course, when you make your aperture smaller, that means less light can go through your lens, which could result in an underexposed photo. So you have to compensate by adding more light somewhere else. If your camera is on a tripod, you might be able to slow your shutter speed. For me, it was pretty easy because I was using off-camera flash. All I had to do was increase the power level of my lights to compensate. But if you are using natural light from a window or whatever, it's a little harder because you can't just tell the sun to get brighter. If you do want to learn about using artificial light and off-camera flash, it is extremely useful and really essential if you want to be a professional photographer. So I do have a beverage and product photography e-course. I'll put a link to that in the description. Make sure you check it out if that is of interest. The last tip we're going to talk about today is a little bit more on the intermediate to advanced side of things, and that is to try compositing or focus stacking. Both these methods allow you to combine multiple images into one using software like Photoshop. Now, I do really pretty basic Photoshop compositing for nearly every client I have. So in my mind, it's very much an essential skill for every kind of beverage and product photographer. The good news is it's not nearly as complicated as it sounds. I have an entire other YouTube video that you could watch that walks you through my process. That video is all about how to make whiskey bottles glow, where basically I take a picture of a bottle and then I take a picture with a silver card in the background to give it this nice amber color, and I composite them together in Photoshop. That same method can be used when you're capturing a bottle with a beverage. In a nutshell, it allows you to just focus on the cocktail. You can take a picture of that, make sure it's in focus and exposed properly. Then you could take another photo of the bottle. It could be in the background, make sure the label looks perfect and that it's in focus, exposed properly. You could do another photo for the glass, making sure it looks perfect and shiny, it doesn't have any specks. And you could take as many photos as you want and then blend them together in Photoshop. I generally only do like 2 to 3, maybe 4 max different exposures and then blend them together. Some really high-end commercial photographers do like 30 plus different images. Don't worry, you don't have to go that crazy. But go check out that video. I promise it's a very powerful tool to learn. I also mentioned something called focus stacking, which is a method you could do with almost any camera in Photoshop. You have to make sure your camera is locked off on a tripod and it doesn't move at all. And then you set your lens to manual focus and you slowly take different photos at different points of focus throughout your scene. And then Photoshop will combine all of them so that you have this super big area all in focus. There's also dedicated focus stacking software you can purchase online. So if you're doing a lot of product work like this or macro photography, something like that might be helpful for you. That should at least get you started on capturing branded beverage content. There are of course other things we could get into, so if you have specific questions around this topic, be sure to let me know in the comments. And as usual, I hope you subscribe to Cocktail Camera and let me know what you want to see next.